Jumbo,
Jumbo.
welcome. You are joining us on Black Power Media Reloaded, and the program that you're joining us with tonight is called Operation Power. My name is Inez Barron, and I am the co-host along with my husband, the bold, the outspoken, the indomitable, the one, the only, the unbought and unbossed.
Humble servant, Charles Barron. It's always an honor to be on with my wife of 43 years. I am a happily married Black man, the stunningly beautiful
Thank you.
and the intellectually brilliant Inez Barron.
Thank you so much. Once again, you're joining us on Operation Power, a voice for Black radical politics and revolutionary change.
That's right.
And we're so pleased to be a part of Black Power Media Reloaded. We come to you each Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we hope that you'll become a regular. Join us, follow us, and tell your friends and encourage them to watch us as well. Well, we believe that we've got an exciting program for you
Yes,
tonight.
we do.
We have the chairman, Omali Yeshitela, who will be joining us shortly. And the topic is the ballot and the bullet. So we're going to have an exciting program. We know that you're going to call somebody, tell them to join us on this program. But we believe that we are at this point along our journey because of the work and the sacrifices of those who have gone before us, our ancestors, in that great cloud of witnesses up in heaven cheering us on and telling us, you can do it. Go ahead. Keep carrying that torch. So we do have a video that we share as a libation to allow us to give homage to them for the work that they have done.
For African people, nothing important happens without a libation. And so for this very important presentation, we begin by the pouring of libation. We pour libation first to our first ancestor, to that hidden one who, though hidden, manifests in all things as all things, that God-Goddess idea in the universe by any and all names. To our first ancestor, we pour libation, Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the first people on this planet, mothers and fathers of all mankind, flashpoint of the human family. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because they were the ones who first gave birth to the idea of civilization, knew we would need a form of governance, and they nurtured that idea along the Nile until it reached its zenith in Kemet. There they built these gigantic monuments as evidence of that great civilization, and they carved instructions on the walls of temples and tombs for us, so we would never forget. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to our ancestors because over time they put together all the tenets of civilization and they took those ideas and left the continent. They were the people of the first Exodus. They left Africa and went all over the world and peopled the world. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. We pour libation too to our ancestors because they did not sit on their laurels. They continued to improve, continued to evolve, and at each point of evolution, they again would leave the continent and settle and resettle the planet. They met themselves coming and going. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time, they found themselves the object of a forced exodus when they were kidnapped, shackled, cargoed, shipped out of Africa and enslaved in diasporas around the world. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to the ancestors left at home, the very young, the aged, the infirm, left to reinvent themselves, depleted of us, human resources. But they were enjoined by us in the diasporas, both objects of a global myopia that ruptured the soul of a people as it ravaged a continent. To those ancestors, we pour libation, Ashe. Pour libation too to those ancestors because over time they began to remember who and what they were. Because no matter where they had been dropped off, they still retained bits and pieces of who and what they were. They retained that African core that described them. They began to remember bits and pieces of a song. They began to remember lines from a rhythm. They began to remember dances that they did in ancient times. They began to remember those ancient drum beats that they now beat out on bare skin. And so to those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to them, because they then began to teach each other. They began to resurrect and reconstruct that history and that culture. They became the new Africans wherever they were. They became the new teachers, preachers, archaeologists, the new singers, dancers, the new drummers, the new Jaliyah. They reconstructed that history and our culture and became new Africans everywhere. So to those ancestors, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation to those ancestors, because they are the ones who pass that information on to us. And so we pour libation to those of you who will watch this presentation. Those of you who are the recipients of that pieced together history, of that reconstructed culture. To you, we pour libation. Ashe. Pour libation too to our children and those yet to be born. For they are the ones that you must teach. And you can only teach if you know the history. So to you who are learning the history and are passing on that history, and to our children who are learning that history and will pass that history on to all eternity, but they will call your name in all eternity. To our children we pour libation. Ashe. Ashe. Ashe.
Asheo.
Asheo.
So important that we acknowledge our ancestors and look to them for guidance as we push forward in our struggle. Just want to once again tell you, you are listening to Operation Power, and POWER is an acronym for people organizing and working for empowerment and respect. And Operation Power grew out of a movement that we had to fight against a private developer who wanted to use a wood-burning incinerator in the East New York section of Brooklyn and release all kinds of particulate matter into the air, community where we already have high levels of asthma and other kinds of ailments. He wanted to produce electricity to sell to Con Ed so that they would be able to get their businesses going. Well, we organized. We had a lot of groups that came together. We formed a coalition. We organized, and we, fought City Hall. And guess what? We won.
Whipped them.
We won. Did not get that incinerator. It was never approved. It was nipped in the bud. It never got any footing. And from that, we organized Operation Power. We came together with other like-minded people, and that became the basis of our movement to get into electoral politics. And we've been in office. We were in office for 21 years, and we were very successful in fighting for what our community needed to move forward. So we're pleased to say Operation Power was a nucleus of the work that we did and was successful. We had 3 new schools built from the ground up. The housing that came into our community met the levels of the people who presently live here. Our community is not gentrified. We had thousands of jobs that came in with the creation of a mall. We fought and kept Walmart from coming in, which is what they wanted to do. And we've been able to support organizations in our community that work on behalf of the people.
And, we also got into health. We knew that the Black Panther Party, we were following the Black Panther Party's edict, and the 10-point program of the Black Panther Party talked about health education, stopping police brutality, most importantly, gaining power to determine the destiny of our beloved Black communities. We even got a multi-million-dollar Betty Shabazz youth health facility built in our district. Cost millions of dollars. We made them bring that out of the budget. Inez made sure that we secured $36 million for a new library that's going to have an African motif about it. $36 million. We're proud to say that the reparations bill that they passed, cowards, they waited till after I got out of office to water it down, but it's still our bill that they passed to deal with reparations, which they not dealing with because they didn't have it the way I wanted it. And then we also got political prisoners freed, supporting the Jericho movement. We got Jalil Montecume out. We got Herman Bell out. We got Seth Hayes out. And we felt that it was important to do a power analysis and say, Where is the power that's determined the destiny of our community? A lot of it is in the New York City Council. It's in city councils across this country. So this is why we said that we understand there's limitations to the electoral arena. We're not going to be able to vote our way to freedom. That's not happening. But there's plenty that we can get that will benefit us to move our revolutionary objectives forward by engaging in the electoral arena, an arena that was not designed to liberate us, but designed to keep us on the American plantation.
Thank you. Well, we've got an exciting guest this evening. He'll be joining us momentarily. I just want to give a brief bio of our guest, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. His roots go back to the 60s when he was involved with SNCC, very involved in registering people. He was an activist, and he tore down a mural in the St. Petersburg City Hall and knew that there would be consequences before he did it, and was willing to, in fact, endure those consequences. He went on and he founded the Uhuru movement, and Uhuru Movement for African Liberation, an organization that has been in the forefront of fighting for the community where he is in St. Louis. They have done remarkable things. Charles and I have been there to see it in the flesh, so to speak. And the community appreciates, acknowledges, and supports the work that they do on behalf of the community. They have a basketball court that they have built. They have the Uhuru Bakery. They have furniture stores. They have things that are meaningful to the needs, the material needs of what the people have in that community. And they're all across the nation and, yes, across the world. They understand that we've got to reach people where they are and get the message out.
You know, we talk about the Uhuru movement all the time, and we talk about the Black is Back coalition. Well, Omali Yeshitela goes way back. Yes, he did SNCC, but he also started the African People's Socialist Party. I believe it was in 1972. He'll correct us if it's not. In the early 1970s, and when the African Revolution in America had major setbacks with the COINTEL program, wiping out Panthers, and even the Civil Rights Movement, and all of the Republic of New Africa, RAM, the Revolutionary Action Movement. I mean, all of these organizations that were revolutionary, radical, and nationalists, revolutionary nationalists, were wiped out. And so, however, the African People's Socialist Party maintained that revolutionary fervor and brought it into the 21st century, put revolution back on the map, on the agenda for the 21st century. This is my attraction to him. He put it on the 21st century. So we see him as the leading revolutionary theorist and practitioner of the 21st century. You know, some people on the white left, they got Karl Marx, and you know, we also have with us, we have Kwame Nkrumah. You know, we have some great intellectual revolutionaries. You know, China had Mao Tse-tung, and you know, there's Amilcar Cabral and so many, Frantz Fanon. Well, in the 21st century, Omali Yeshitela is a revolutionary theorist that has put theory into practice and yielded a powerful, powerful movement for us to continue our struggle for radical, systemic, revolutionary change in the 21st century. So we want to bring to the microphone, without any further delay, the chairman. Go on, bring him
on to the camera. Yes, we want to thank There you are. Welcome. Uhuru. That's that word. That's that greeting word. Uhuru. It means freedom. That's right.
Yeah, it's so good to see you and to be with you again. And I'm really glad that that we're doing this discussion on today. I'm particularly glad because so many people have been driven to a place of despair by the existing regime here in the United States. We have had to experience, kidnappings of of people, of heads of state. We've seen justice and genocidal assault on the people of Palestine. The war that's being waged against the people of Iran, just criminal behavior in many ways. And so many people have been driven to states of despair. We're talking about a instance where the National Guards have been sent into our communities and ostensibly to fight against crime. It's extraordinary. I mean, that's extraordinary. It's like John Dillinger, sending people to guard against bank robbery. You know what I mean? But we've seen that, and National Guard sent to the southern border, not to the northern border, where people from Canada might be coming across, or white people, but the southern border. And I think for many people, the last most serious thing for many people was the Supreme Court, April 29th, the gutting the Voting Rights Act of 1965. For many people, that was one of the most serious things, and it has frightened a lot of people and driven a lot of people into states of despair. And other people, of course, are oblivious and unfortunately to anything that's going on here. But it is a really important moment. So I'm glad we have an opportunity to talk about that at this moment, to talk about the 10th annual electoral campaign school that was initiated by the Black is Back Coalition, and which is really important. Charles, I think you may have even been there for the first meeting, not just the school, but in St. Petersburg, Florida, where we held the founding convention of the Black is Back Coalition. It was a really important move that some people didn't understand, because part of what we've been about for the longest period of time is mobilizing our people and trying to reachieve an element of coherence to a movement that had been assaulted, leaders murdered throughout the country. You know, we experienced Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, something in 1960, I think by 1968, some 30 members of the Black Panther Party or more had been assassinated. Some 300 have been arrested throughout this country. So a major war was being made against our struggle. And so the Black is Back Coalition was really important for us to bring everything back together, to give us some coherence that had been lost. Because for the longest period of time, what many people have forgotten, when they tremble about loss of the Voting Rights Act, what many people have forgotten is that the voting rights was not something that was bestowed upon our people by some beneficent government that had some sudden epiphany that it might be good to allow African people to vote. But it was, as we said over and over again, we did not win the Voting Rights Act. We did not win the right to vote by voting. It was struggle that did that. It was struggle of African people. And we like to remind people that that this pretense that we run into right now, that somehow this great democracy provided a Bill of Rights. We have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of all of these things. That wasn't for us. And it wasn't for us because at the time the Bill of Rights was created, something like 1791, African people had no rights at all. We were property. In the same way a chair was property, a shoe was property, a chicken was property, we were property. And property owners did with us as they willed, as they wished, without any recourse. We had no recourse at all. And so it was struggle by African people. And then it was changing situation in the world where the anti-colonial struggle was happening globally, not just inside the United States, and where many countries were involved in making decisions about where they were going to go, what kind of political and economic plans or systems where they're going to create. And the United States and the traditional colonial powers had to contend at that moment with the Soviet Union, or Soviet Russia, if you will, that was pointing to our churches being bombed, our children being killed in the United States, and telling the world, this is what capitalism brings you. And this is why our communism is better than capitalism. And so this was a real problem that the United States had to deal with as well. And this is one of the things that made it necessary, in addition to the struggles that we were initiating here on the ground as African people. This is something that made it, and because without that struggle, we wouldn't have seen the church bombings. We wouldn't have seen the water hoses, fire hoses used against our children in Birmingham and places like that. But this struggle, this contest the United States was involved in to maintain global supremacy, made it necessary for them to give the appearance of African people having rights here. And so that's why you had 1964, the so-called Civil Rights Bill was passed. And now we're supposed to be citizens. We got civil rights, finally, in 1964. Mm-hmm. And of course, got civil rights, but you can't vote. So then hurriedly, 1965, the Voting Rights Act became necessary. But what was happening in the real world, I mean, when we talk about the Voting Rights Act became necessary, it wasn't like a group of people say, hey, let's get together and simply fight for voting as an end unto itself. We were involved in struggle, and some of the forces that you mentioned, like the Revolutionary Action Movement, RAM, and others. Malcolm X was a critical ideological leader at this moment. He was extraordinarily important. And so, like the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965. In 1965, February 4th, 1965, 17 days before he was killed, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, brought Malcolm into Selma, Alabama, and where this incredible struggle for voting rights was going on. King was already in jail. Malcolm guessed that he meets with Coretta Scott King, who seemed to have been as important to Martin Luther King as Inez Barron is to Charles Barron. And he met with Coretta Scott King and told him that he was there to unite the struggle, let them know that he was there, and let them know that they'd be better off dealing with what King was bringing, because he was going to be bringing something even heavier. So you had this relationship. You saw Martin Luther King. Remember, 1964. This is the same period where Malcolm made his presentation, the ballot or the bullet. And this is where Malcolm X put forth a program. Remember this program was something that Malcolm X was talking about within the context of African people voting. What did he say? He said he had a program that he called Black Nationalism. And he said that Black nationalism means that in politics, that we have to control the politics and the politicians in our own community. Right. Economically, we have to control the economy in our own community. We have to begin to develop our own economy. Socially, we have to do the same kind of thing. So Malcolm was putting forth a Black nationalist, as he characterized it, program. And his position and his theme of that incredible presentation, some have regarded as the best presentation made by anybody at any time, the ballot or the bullet. An extraordinary presentation it was. And his theme was one that was letting the world know that there were no limits to what African people would do. He was saying, we're going to vote, and this is a critical thing. We're going to either get freedom by voting, or we're going to get freedom by the bullet. But we're going to get freedom. That was the whole issue. Freedom was on the agenda. For King, freedom was on the agenda. When King put forth the whole program of the Poor People's Campaign, he was not doing this for Lyndon Baines Johnson or for the Democratic Party. He said he was going into Washington, D.C., and Malcolm lauded him for having said he's going to lay down on. He said, that's the Black Revolution. They're going to go into Washington, D.C. They're going to lay on the air
Airport.
at the airports and lay on the runways and not allow any planes to land, et cetera, et cetera. Malcolm was extolling King for making that kind of politics, for moving in that fashion. So they killed Malcolm in 1965. 17 days after his presentation, after his presence in Selma, Alabama, 17 days after he sealed this relationship with Martin Luther King and the civil rights forces. 17 days later, they killed Malcolm X. And then, of course, they killed Martin Luther King 3 years after that. But this whole time frame that we're looking at, extraordinary. I mean, in the same time frame that we're talking about, they killed Malcolm, but that was too late because Malcolm had already put so much stuff in motion. Malcolm was a powerful influence of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Malcolm and SNCC, as you know, brought Malcolm into Selma. But Malcolm also was responsible for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee developing this whole position on anti-colonial self-determination, the one that sparked the Atlanta Project with Vine City when Julian Bond, who won an election for a state election for the state government, and they refused to seat Bond because Bond's position on the Vietnam War. Bond was the one who represented SNCC. SNCC had put out a position against the Vietnam War. It was SNCC, and many people may have forgotten, it was SNCC who said, hell no, we won't go. It was SNCC who led that whole struggle against Vietnam. But of course, Malcolm talked about Vietnam too, didn't he?
Yes,
he was talking about these tiny men with nothing but a blade. Say we had nothing but a blade and a bowl of rice. But when the sun went down, it was even Stevens. It was Malcolm who told us already what the futility of what they're trying to do in Iran right now. He said a white man can't win another war on the ground. He said he's powerful in the air. He can send bombs and things from a distance, but on the ground, he can't do it. And that's why you don't see anybody going down on the ground in Iran right now. And the Iranians are doing a Bruce Lee, come on, but nobody wants to fight like that. Nobody wants to die. But the point is that this was a critical moment and we were learning so many lessons. And so at this time, they killed Malcolm, but we still have RAM. We still have other formations. In almost a year to the day when Martin Luther King did a presentation that some people consider his death knell at Riverside Church, right there where you're located, where he made that important presentation, where he said publicly he didn't know if he was going to be able to maintain this whole posture of nonviolence because people are coming up to him and saying, Dr. King, how can you require us to be nonviolent, as violent as America is in Vietnam? So this same place, here we have almost a year later, a year to the month later, a year and a month later, you have SNCC's James Foreman, who was over SNCC's international affairs. He comes to Riverside Church. He marched to the front of Riverside Church, and he was stiff-arming everybody who was trying to stop him from getting to the front. And he got to the front, and what he presented there was the Black agenda, and it was called for reparations of $300 million to going to Africans from the church and from the synagogues inside this country. The preacher and something like 2/3 of the parishioners got out of the church as he was speaking, what have you. But he opened up at that speech. He opened up the whole struggle of reparations. But a week before, in Detroit, we had a situation where the National Black Conference on Economic Development happened in Detroit. This is Black people coming together, talking about Black economics for ourselves. This is the reparations position was voted on and adopted at that conference as well. So we had this incredible struggles that we're developing here. These are Black people trying to be free. There was black people, and they didn't vote. They didn't come down and tell them, let's vote. They said, this is our agenda. This is what we want. And to make sure, they tried to make sure that none of this stuff got on the agenda. When they killed Malcolm, that was not going to be on the ballot. Malcolm's Black Nationalist program was not going to be on the ballot. King's Poor People's Campaign was not going to be on the ballot. So they killed people to deny us, so you have access to the ballot formally, but they killed people to make sure that you can vote, but you can only vote for Joe Biden's organization. You can only vote for Kamala Harris' organization. You can only vote for George Wallace's organization. You have nothing of our own that we can vote for. And so that's why many people have became our people became so disinterested in voting. I mean, and we hear the cry all the time. Our ancestors died for the right to vote, and y'all won't vote, and how pitiful and bad y'all are for not voting. But the truth of the matter is that they killed everything that we had to vote for. They took us out of the action, and that's where you come in. Because what you and Inez, what you were talking about before, they killed Malcolm, but it was too late. And they didn't want the stuff on the ballot, but you put it on the ballot. That's right. What you've been doing, putting it on the ballot. That's why they attacked me and the Black is Back Coalition, because we're taking it back to the ballot, because we're reorganizing a struggle against colonialism. That's the thing that they want off the agenda. That's why they were killing Panthers. And many people who were Panthers then don't get it today. That the question was anti-colonialism. The question was self-government, self-reliance, etc., self-determination. And many people claim and proclaim how much they love the Panthers. They don't love the Panthers enough to be for self-government. They don't love the Panthers enough to be for self-determination. That's what the Panthers were about. That was the whole program of the Black Panther Party revolved around that. That's what even the whole question of a plebiscite, so the African people could determine what it is we wanted to do. Now you can call yourself free when you have a situation where the formal ending of this whole colonial slavery happens, and they don't even ask our opinion of whether or not we want to stay here or not. They don't say what you want. They say, y'all not citizens. That's it. That ain't free. That's the determination made by some other force, etc. So this is the kind of thing that we were confronted with, and this is part of what the discussions we had on the first day of the conference was all about, of the school. And that's why it was important.
Yep, that's what I want to the hero on that. I'm glad you took it to that point. It's interesting what you said, that our people really don't want to vote because they're really not down with the system. But guess what? Neither is a lot of white people not voting and not down with the system. Because when you think of in the last election, it were like, for the presidential election, there were 240 million registered voters. 80 million, close to 90 million, stayed home. In every presidential election in America, it's hardly ever over 60% of the vote coming out. In other countries, it's 80 and 90% because they believe in their system. They may want other people leading it, but they believe in their system. And this one, 80 to 90 million people stayed home. 160 million came out to vote. 77 million for Trump, 75 million for Kamala Harris. And guess what? Only 538 people can vote directly for president, the Electoral College.
Yes.
This is why Malcolm called it a hypocrisy, not a democracy. And so what we're trying to do is what you said. We're not going to leave any arena of our oppressor uncontested. And that's the great purpose of the electoral school. Talk a bit about some of the ideological development that we went over on Friday, Saturday. I think it was June 6th and June 7th. So Saturday, it's important to have not just getting black faces in high places. That's not black power or black change or black revolution or black leadership. But the importance of the ideological development of the candidates we're running. And then we'll talk more about the Sunday presentations that spoke more on the actual pragmatic things that you have to do to beat the machine.
I think that's extremely important because there was, for a while, a debate up inside. It was not really a debate. There was a position inside the Black is Back coalition that we were wasting our time by using the first day for ideological and political discussion. That because the people came, what they were really interested in was learning how to run for office. And so, as they said, while we don't think it's wrong to have this discussion, we should have it on the second day because most people are going to be leaving after the first day. So, well, that's all right because the people we want them to, have an understanding of what this struggle is all about. They need to understand the world because, as you know, the Democratic Party is doing all kinds of work now, especially with African women, to teach you how to run for office, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to do more than just run for office. We want you to be able to run in the interests of our people and in the interests of the oppressed and working peoples around the world, inside this country and around the world. We want you to have a grip on that. And we want you to, we want to take the mystery out of the whole electoral process. Because, for some people, voting in elections is in the Bible, like in the Bible. If you don't do that, doomed and cursed and what have you. So we wanted to take the mystery out of that. Then we wanted to make sure, as you mentioned, that we don't leave this arena uncontested, so that the only ones who are involved in these kinds of discussions is like the African petty bourgeoisie and the white ruling class and its minions.
Right.
And because when you do that, and this becomes a legitimate process through which a political discussion is happening. This is a legitimate process through which political discussion is happening. Then if the masses don't hear you, the only thing they hear is this other stuff, and that lends legitimacy to them, and then we become illegitimate. And then and also we can be characterized as illegal, and that's what they've done with our views, make them illegal, illegitimate, because they can't get in the arena they're accustomed to. That's considered the legitimate arena of discussion. So we have to go there. And I want us to not be apologizing for doing that. We don't have to apologize for doing that. The thing is that the questions that many people say they are prepared to go to limits for don't even get discussed by the masses of people. Don't even have an opportunity to hear anything about that. What are you talking about? The first time they hear about you is when they're bombing your churches or bombing your office and hauling you off the jail on camera. They don't know anything that you stand for. So you become this weirdos, etc., because the masses have not had access to you. So we want the people to be able to access us because those institutions confer legitimacy onto political ideas. They don't have to agree with them, but they're legitimate ideas because they can get to them in that arena. And so that's one of the things that makes it so important. That's what Afia Mwangaza did a whole thing on the history of this struggle of African people, how going back to the 19th century and what have you, we were winning rights to vote and things like this with different articles that were passed, et cetera, and that this was an ongoing struggle that we've been involved in. We had people like Roger Wareham, who from December 12th, who was one of the presenters as well, and he and Afia, who worked together doing United Nations work and things like that. And why would they do United Nations work? Because the electoral arena, the voting arena, the political arena is much larger than our oppressors would have us believe. Which is one of the reasons they attacked us also, because we were talking to Russians, because we were talking to people in Spain and other places around the world. So we're not supposed to have that discussion. You probably heard it, as I used to hear it all the time, that the reason they killed Malcolm, because Malcolm took the struggle internationally, because he took it out to the world, because he ended the isolation of the struggle of African people in this country. and took it around the world. They said the same thing. Even kings in a circle didn't want him to take a stand on Vietnam. They fought him furiously about taking a stand on Vietnam, because you can't do anything international. You just have to maintain everything within the domestic confines, of the United States. So we had Afia, which she was very good. Roger was really on point. Did a hell of a good job in terms of giving us some of the history and even interpreting what this stuff meant legally about taking the voting rights out, etc.
Interesting you should mention Roger, because Roger, as you mentioned, with the December 12th movement, and they came out to East New York, strong brothers and sisters, and was a central part of our campaign. So once we made our case to Roger and our great friend, you and I, Viola Plummer, maybe she rest in peace. He always spoke highly of you as Joe Waller. She knew you as Joe Waller.
Joe Wallace.
But I remember sitting with Viola and saying, Viola, we need to bring revolutionaries into this process. And Viola, Omali Clay and Roger,
Coltrane,
Timaranga. So all of them, we all got together. They were a central part of our campaign. And when we won, they were Viola was my chief of staff. Omali Clay was Inez's chief of staff. We hired revolutionaries on the staff so that they not only did constituent services and all of that stuff, but every constituent we spoke to them about revolution. As you would say, the whole damn system, not just their particular pain, but connecting them to the relief they would have if we dismantled the whole damn system and brought in and ushered something new that would prioritize human need over human greed and the people over some party. So, Chairman, talk more about that, because that's what was so powerful during that weekend.
Do that, by the way. I just wanted to say we had to do that. We had to help our people understand the whole question of colonialism. We had to help our people understand that we are not just some fringe force. I'm talking about as Black people. I'm not talking about necessarily mean, but that we are not some fringe force standing, on the fringes of human civilization and stuff like that. The way the story gets conferred, to us. The fact is that what happened, African people are central to the existing of the current social system, the economic and political configuration of the world today. That includes China, Russia, Turkey, India, the United States. The economic and political configuration of the world today has its origin. Today's world has its origin in the attack by Portugal on Africa 600 years ago. And this is the process that started the kidnapping and forced dispersal of African people around the world. That's why there is a Venezuela. Was no Venezuela before then. There is a Venezuela now because of the theft of Africans and forced dispersal of African people, places like Haiti, Venezuela, all of the Americas, everything that's characterized as the Americas came into existence. And this is the birth of colonialism. The whole world, for the first time in history, you had a world economy. Never was a world economy. People traded with each other. Black people traded with people all around the world. That's why you got all these, in the libations. The sister was talking about it. We were everywhere. But there was never a single world economy that linked us all together until this attack on Africa, our dispersal, the creation of these colonies and what have you. They used to refer to it as what do they call this thing about the trading, between Africa, Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Anyway, I forgot the characterization.
Are you talking about the petrodollar?
No, this was going back for ages. But the point is, you have now a global system. That's the basic point. It is a mode of production. and we are central to it. But we have never never understood it in that fashion. Nobody has talked to us about it in that fashion. Not Marx, not Lenin, not Mao. Nobody. Mao probably and Lenin probably came closest to it because they came closest to understanding the whole role of colonialism in the world. But anyway, so this was a really important discussion to talk about the colonial mode of production. So Africans need to understand our own significance. We have to understand our own significance, not just we black and proud, not just that, but our significance to the functioning of this social system, period, which is why we're always attacked, always slandered, always put in these places because of our significance to the functioning of this system. Africans move a certain way, the whole system shudders. The whole system shudders.
I'm glad you brought that up because it appears, not it appears, it's a fact that any African or Asian leader of a nation that chooses a non-capitalistic path for the development of their country, they become thugs, dope dealers, dictators, everything to try to justify either character assassinating them or physically assassinating them. So talk a little bit about, I'm doing a piece called Birth Pains of a New World Order. And I don't know why I use that soft word, but the fact of the matter is that the American empire is on the decline and the American dollar is being devalued, particularly in the movement around BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and 20 other countries. They're having their own new development bank, and they're saying the hell with the IMF and the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, and then the Sahel revolution in West Africa, looking at Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, and how they're now bringing in this new order. So we're not going to have no more of a single polar domination. It used to be bipolar, Russia and America, and then America became the only power. Now it seems to be moving to a multilateral, multipolar world, and the dollar is not going to be the currency. So as they said in the West Africa, France, get the hell out of Africa, leave the gold behind and take America with you. Leave the uranium behind and take America with you. Are we experiencing the birth pains of a new world order?
I think it's really important, first of all, to realize that America itself is a settler colony. Mm-hmm. We have to say that. And that it just got here. It's only 250 years old. It talks about 250 years. And when you compare that to any place in Africa, Asia, etc., they just got here. And it's a very fragile situation that they're fighting for their very lives right now. This whole social system, people see there's some show of strength. Sometimes they do. But increasingly, the Iranians are showing that it's not really strength that's responsible for this braggadocio, that it is desperation that's responsible for the way they're moving and what have you. So, and then we see the movement of what we see is a fracturing that the colonial powers are losing their grip on the world. Mm-hmm. And because they've controlled the petrodollars, that everybody is tied into them economically, which is one of the reasons BRICS is so important, which is why they had to kill Gaddafi, which is why they had to overthrow so many people, because they were trying to break out of this stranglehold that the U.S. dollar had on them. And that's the real thing. At the moment the U.S. dollar is not the defining currency in the world, you can really see something powerful happening in terms of the depletion of power here. So I think that's really something that people talk about, and there's some validity in terms of what they characterize as a multipolar world. But for us, I think the question is, regardless of how many poles there are in this world, Africa and African people have to have control of our own lives. That's because there was a multipolar decision that was made in 1884 and 85 in Berlin, Germany, when they
Right.
carved up Africa and gave different parts of it to different European powers, etc. So we can be exploited and oppressed by a multipolar world who steal our resources, take everything that we need. So Africa has to come out of this in charge of our own affairs, our own resources, and then we can establish relationships as equals with anybody in the world. It has to be our decision. So yeah, and I think that's really important because everybody's fighting for their own interests. Everybody is.
That's right.
Is fighting for them, and we've passed that point. There was a time, it really was a time in the world, in relatively modern history, when we saw a communist revolution, when we saw Maoists, and we saw even Leninists and things like that, who really believed in an international social system. In this instance, it was going to be this communist system that all the peoples could be united, no exploitation, no oppression, etc. But we've reached a point now, and the reason we reached this point is because the thing that was missing from the equation in every instance was the colonial question. And because everything, all of this, whether it was capitalism, feudalism, all this stuff rests upon the foundation of the colonial enslavement of Africa and other peoples around the world. So we were secondary in the brains of everybody. We had no agency of our own. Everybody was making decisions about us and for us, etc. Even now, when you read most important discussions that you can find, given extraordinary, deep and profound analysis of what's happening in the world, you will not read anything that makes it a suggestion that Africa has a future of its own. Everything, you talk about Asia, you talk about the Americas, you talk about BRICS, but not Africa.
Not Africa.
Africa is not even in the equation.
That's right.
We have to bring, and we are bringing Africa back into the equation. You know that we know Africa is important because Garvey told us so.
That's right.
That's why, and that's why they moved on Garvey, because he Africa for Africans at home and abroad. This was the real thing that was understood at the time. And increasingly, what you see is everybody wants a piece of Africa, no matter how they call it.
That's right.
No matter what the polarity is.
That's
everybody
right.
wants a piece of Africa.
That's right.
And the thing that's really distressing, well, it's not distressing, but that we have to deal with is when we look at what's happening, especially in the world and in this country, you don't hear leftists, even Negro leftists, describing what's happening to African people. Like this critical thing. You got National Guards in our community. You got the guy who's over the ministry, the Department of War, who's talking about and the current president talking about using our communities, our streets, to train, to bring troops in, to train them to fight against crime. And when you start talking about crime, you know who they're talking about in every instance. Whether it's Joe Biden with his crime bill and Bill Clinton with his crime bill, it's us in every instance. And so that's part of what it is that we're looking at. So yeah, we support all of these efforts by countries who are breaking free, and in terms of economically and etc. But we also recognize that even if we are in this group, this crowd, we have to set our own path to make sure that we Africans, come out with what it is that we need in control of our own future.
Well, you've always said that central to the liberation of African people in the diaspora is the liberation and unification of Africa under socialism. And I think you also mentioned that the critical importance of Africans here in the belly of the beast, governing ourselves and controlling ourselves. The last count I read was that there were 51.2 million of us in the belly of the beast. And I think the whole world is watching us. We can talk about Sahel all we want. We can talk about BRICS all we want, and I do all over the place. But the resources of Africa that is supplying the world, if we want to beat imperialism, just be independent. If you claim your independence, because as you said very well in your books, that this is like a tapeworm, and we're the host, and that this is a parasitic relationship we have with capitalism. So talk about the importance of us rising up in the belly of the beast and striking a mighty blow against colonialism. Even King saw our communities as domestic colonies of a colonial capitalist system. And then, this is unfair to you, close it out with Cuba. What's happening with Cuba right now?
Ghana for independence of Ghana. King was there.
That's right.
And I think it's really important for us to understand this. And Comrade Louise Kinshasa, who was one of the presenters on the first day, and he talked about he's Congo born. He's been living in England as a refugee for a while, but he talks about how Africans on the continent, with all the complaints that Africans make about the conditions and what's happened to them. He says, one reason that you can withstand this, he says, what Africans in America have gone through. He said, Africans in the United States have shown us that we can go through it. We can come out of it. We can win. We can be victorious. And I think it's really important for us to understand, there may be 52 million of us here, but there's something like 200 billion of us worldwide. And that we have to complete what Garvey was talking about, to close this circle, because we have run into the African liberation movement has run into its limitations when fought within these borders created by the colonizers. All these borders that you see, whether they're in Latin America, whether they're in the Middle East, whether they're here, they were not here before the white man got here and drew those borders. Those borders function as property lines more than anything else. And so we don't have respect for those borders. And so we're involved in a struggle that unites all of Africa, all of African people in solidarity with the oppressed and working masses of the world. That's what it is that we are about. And the voting thing is an instrument that we use to further the struggle for liberation. And if it can't take us to liberation, it's no use to us anyway. But they don't want us to use it because this is a vehicle that's important for us to be able to take messages, legitimate messages in the brains of our people to masses of African people who won't have an opportunity to hear us otherwise. We think we're doing raising hell. We get 500 people to a rally, et cetera, but all those people who can hear a Democratic candidate, in these major elections and stuff, we don't have access to their ears. We don't have access to their media and stuff like that. We take this thing, the voting thing, and we use it to further the struggle and spread our ideas. And then all the stuff you want to do down the line becomes much more likely to be successful.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time. But what you said was so critical, because when we look at just in our little corner here in East New York, Inez got 35,000 votes one general election. 35,000 people voted for her.
Yes.
25, 30,000 people voted.
In an election, yes.
In one election,
yes.
In a little district.
Yes.
When I say revolution is going to happen from the bottom up, this is what we're talking about. We have, in the elections that we've had, I think some of our lowest numbers were in the primary election. You're talking 5,000 to 15,000 people.
Apologizing for doing that, are you?
No,
we don't apologize.
No apologies whatsoever. I'm trying to more people to do it. No, not at all.
Yes.
I have no apologies for doing that. Matter of fact, I think this is one of the essential strategies that we need to take on. Because in addition to, you get a lot of listening or people to talk to, the resources you can get out of that, and at the same time maintain your revolutionary fervor. It is essential, critical. I mean, what's his name? Fidel Castro ran for state Representative
Sure.
Marcus Garvey was a counselor in
Sure.
Jamaica. And Kwame and Nkrumah, all of them had political parties.
Sure.
So,
Lumumba.
Lumumba, this is critical.
Yeah.
Chairman, close your remarks. Got a minute. Go for it.
Okay. I just want to appreciate you again, and to say that elections are important, and we can do elections. We can do our own elections. One of the most important elections, I think, happened in 1920, right there in your beloved New York, where Marcus Garvey had from 25 to 50,000 people there at Madison Square Garden. Couldn't fit them all in there. That's where the red, black, and green flag comes from. That's where black people voted Garvey to be the provisional president of Africa, etc. That's where we laid out some of the most important things. You should read the Declaration of Rights of the Negro people that came out of that. We're still talking about that stuff that Garvey laid out then. We voted on that. Then we called the Democratic Party was nothing the American government did. We did that, you know, and that's the kind of thing that we have to do where we are. We can govern based on being given the right to do it by our own people in the spaces where we occupy. That is ultimately what's going to make the determination of what it means to be free. And so we have to take those spaces and turn them into free spaces for African people. That's the kind of stuff we're trying to do right here that Carmen Inez was talking about, looking at in St. Louis, North St. Louis. We've transformed an entire African community that way, and that's the kind of stuff. So I just want people to know, if I got just a second, that as you know, we were put on trial, and the U.S. government intended to put us in prison for 15 years, charge us $500,000 each. There were three of us, me, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville from the African People's Solidarity Committee. And this was important because it's the first time they've ever attacked the African liberation movement, that they had to go in their own colonial communities to lock up some white people too. Some of the colonizers. They killed Fred Hampton. You didn't see anything like that happen. When they killed Malcolm X, you didn't see the white people rising up, upset, etc. So we've broken out of this encirclement, and we've created work in other spaces and what have you. It makes it necessary for them now to come for themselves when they're coming to get us. So we were found not guilty of being Russian agents for talking about reparations and genocide, etc. But we were found guilty of thinking about it, and so they call it a conspiracy. And so we were that was punishable by 5 years. We were given a 3-year what do you call it, probation, no fines, anything like that. So we're going to Atlanta in July. On July 22nd, there's going to be a hearing in Atlanta. The court has allowed us to have oral arguments, which is a good sign. So that's going to be on the 22nd. On the 21st, we're going to have an event there. On the 21st, the day before, and then on the evening of the 22nd, we're going to come together with a summation. So there should be a lot of people there, and we hope so, because the critical question always has been the people. And that's been the thing that's made the difference up and down the line. Where are we now in terms of time? I'm over, Anna.
We're out of here. We're out of here. We're going to let our next close, but we want to thank our brother Kalonji Changa. He put up the flyer and everything.
Appreciate it, Kalonji.
Kalonji's all right. And let's have some fun.
Just want to say, we want to thank you once again for doing your presentation and causing our consciousness to be raised and get people to understand it's not just voting in an end in itself. We've got to vote as we make that a part of our journey to our liberation, for getting people to understand that what we've done here is great in terms of our fight and our struggle as an example for our African brothers and sisters. And we've got to make that unity and make that position and make that statement moving forward. And also understanding that we can't allow them, as I've heard you say in the past, make us the object of what's going on. We've got to be the subject. We've got to be in the leadership. It's got to be about us as our deciding vote what it is that we want to do for our people, for ourselves.
Right on. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. And as we say each and every week, the truth shall set you free, and power is the great equalizer. Black Power.
Black Power. And Uhuru.
Operation P.O.W.E.R stands for people organizing and working for empowerment and respect.
Operation P.O.W.E.R is a grassroots social justice organization founded by local community stakeholders, which includes activists, organizers, and leaders who understand that the system as it is currently structured is destroying us and our communities.
The system, the capitalist system, one that promotes human greed over human need, one that promotes profit over people, needs to be dismantled. These local community organizers recognize capitalism needs to be destroyed and replaced with socialism.
Operation P.O.W.E.R was founded in 1997 with the understanding that uprooting capitalism needs to begin locally. Operation P.O.W.E.R understood that our communities are the perfect vehicle to dismantle this parasitic capitalist system brick by brick, and the economic, political, and cultural institutions and other systems in place in our local community infrastructure. Whether it's the local school board, community board, city council, state assembly, all represents mechanisms to control the destiny of our people.
In 1997, Operation P.O.W.E.R launched the campaign Charles Barron for City Council that would lead to over 20 years of radical changes in the East New York community. These changes included over 20,000 units of housing affordable to our community, 3 $88 million schools, over $110 million secured and allocated for community parks, millions secured for library upgrades, and another $42 million for the construction of a new library.
Cultural programs such as the Juneteenth celebration, Kwanzaa programs, and reinterment of Sankofa Park, securing thousands of jobs for local residents.
We've secured political seats that include city council seat, state assembly seat, state committee person, male and female district leader, chair of the local community board members, campaigning and getting a judge from the community elected, county committee seats, block association presidents, tenant presidents, and much more.
And all this was done while being Black radicals. We are Black radicals, which means getting to the root causes of the problems challenging our community. We need to get to the root and not lose ourselves battling the symptoms of this vicious capitalist system, because we know that revolution is the solution.
Operation P.O.W.E.R believes in Black power for Black people. Black power is still needed and still relevant. Operation P.O.W.E.R believes that Black radicalism is the only position we can afford to take, getting to the root of our problem for revolutionary change. Operation P.O.W.E.R believes in community control for Black people as the only way to get to self-determination and liberation.
Operation P.O.W.E.R believes that we need to move to a more socialist system, a communal system that doesn't suffocate but liberates. With these beliefs, we take collective action for our self-determination and liberation by being a part of Operation P.O.W.E.R.